Hello everyone and welcome down to episode 124 of the Down South Photo Show with me, Brendan Waits, here in Ocean Grove, Victoria, Australia. And the guy on your other screen or in your other ear, if you're listening to the podcast, is not Cameron Blake in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. It's a good hello and welcome to the Down South Photo Show to Matt Krumins. Hello, Matt.
Hello. I didn't realize I was co-anchoring tonight. That's exciting. I never get to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't even think I told you that you were, but you are. So
hey, I'm in. Look, you know what? I would have worn slightly puffier clothes, grown my beard out a little bit, said more things about politics, and I could have played that part. But alas, here we are with just me and my trusty glass of wine.
I like it. Just off there, I said to Matt, I'm not drinking midweek, so I've gone to water, and Matt's showing me up with his red. So anyway, who knows? Maybe a beer will come out later on. Thanks to everyone who subscribes and follows the channel here on the Down South Photo Show, cruising up to the 850 subs on the YouTubes and about 24 billion on the audio version of the podcast. Yeah, I know, right? Really quick plug for our winter photo competition that we've got running. The theme is winter, and you can find that on our Facebook page on the Down. So search Down South Photo Show on Facebook and enter our winter competition. Matt, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, a lot of people who follow the Down South Photo Show will already be familiar with Matt's work, particularly when it comes to the Bright Festival of Photography, which he is here to talk about a little bit later on. But I'm actually going to ask you a few questions, Matt, to get the show rolling. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I love this part because, you know, being a photographer, we work solo so much of the time that I often ask myself questions, and that doesn't go particularly well. So when someone else is willing to do it, I'm all in.
Nice. Well, for those of you who don't know Matt, we're gonna tell you all about him. Well, he's going to tell you all about him.
Which I was prepared for. Yeah.
So, Matt, you're into photography, I reckon. Just a hunch.
Look, I do it for a job. We all got to love our job at some degree. So yeah, I'd say into it. Yeah.
So you are, in inverted commas, as we all do, a professional photographer.
I hate the term, but I'm going to say
yeah. And I do too. That's why I do it in the air quotes, because do people give me money for my photos? Yes. I guess that makes me a professional photographer. Do you think along those lines as well?
I think it's actually kind of, yeah, definitely. But I also feel as though, and this is just where pure ego comes into it, and I don't think I've got a particularly big ego, but it's almost like if you have to say you're a professional photographer, it's like, well, why? Why do you have to say that? Yeah. Do you need to say it because you were wondering if the person was about to give you some money? Like, realistically, you know what I mean? Like, it is, you kind of do it, and if you get money from it, hooray for you. If you don't, well, too bad maybe. But yeah, it's kind of like, if you have to say it, then does it really matter? If you have to tell people you're the most important person in the room, then you're probably not. And
right. Well, professional photographers are rarely the most important person in the room, Matt.
Absolutely, definitely the bottom ranking, although probably arguably have the most pressure on them to actually deliver something.
Well, that is goes without saying. Matt, what I'm gonna lead with the obvious question. What got you into photography, Matt?
It's really not a great story, to be honest.
Okay, well, we'll skip that question and move on. No, please indulge.
Yeah, so this is it's not a long story. That's going to sound long though. You know, when people say, well, when I was a kid, it's not like that, but it kind of is like that. So I've always been into video production. When I was at school, I loved drama, although I was not very good at it. I used to love like that video production-y stuff, and we didn't have digital at the time. And I had a little business that ran on the side, and it was converting Super 8 film to VHS videos. And I got into video from there, and then I got like a nicer digital video camera and a computer, and sort of built it up a little bit. And you know what really changed it all? I got into underwater videography because I had a very bad breakup with a girlfriend that I was super in love with. Obviously wasn't meant to be.
Oh, this story's great. No. Right? You are so wrong. This story's unreal.
Well, here's the thing: is like I had this moment, and my mum was like, "Mate, you should get into scuba again because like you've got nothing else in your life," which was arguably true. And got into that, and very quickly realized that none of my friends kind of understood what I was doing. They were all just like, "Well, what do you mean you go diving on the weekend? It's Melbourne, it's freezing cold. Why would you do that? It's just sand and seaweed." And they kind of it's not they give me a terribly hard time, but I felt like I needed to prove what I was doing a bit. Yep. And it was right at the time that Facebook was kind of taking off, and Facebook didn't take video, and yet I was into video. So what I would do, I just was like, well, shit, I better give up the video and photos, because to show anyone anything, you got to do photos, and kind of took off from there. And there's a long, winding, very complicated journey that happened from that point. But that was kind of like the start of it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so we're talking like 2007, something like that.
Ooh, good question.
Yeah. I think that's when Facebook started to happen, or maybe a bit later than that. Anyway, no, I reckon around 06, 07, something like that.
So how long does that ago? Like
pushing 18 years, my friend.
Okay, that'd be about right. Because so I finished, we had our 20th year anniversary for school this year.
Right.
And it would have been like 2 years out of school. So that'd be probably, but you've got a great memory.
I always link it back because one of the first things I ever shared on Facebook was the birth of my daughter, who was turning 18 in a couple of months' time. So, yes, that's how I can sort of remember it. So, scuba, underwater photography was your genesis into the industry, if you like. So you'd been a diver for quite some time beforehand?
I had been, although realistically, that was kind of not my industry experience. That was like my playing. Right. My actual first foray into like serious, when I say serious, I guess it was a serious client. So I did a lot of video production, and I was working at school in video production, right? And then we had a job, and it was I won't name the post-production house because they get touchy about things, but I worked for a post-production house that does the editing for TV shows, and we had ANZ as a client.
Yep.
And ANZ said, well, we're going to send you to China to do these videos connecting China and Australia. And it was when ANZ did a big rebranding thing. And I kid you not, it would have been like 12 hours out from me flying out to China. And the boss goes, oh, by the way, they need still photos as well. And I'm like, oh, all right, cool. Because we don't have a camera for that. Like, we don't even have a camera. We've got a video camera. And back then you didn't use DSLRs for video back then. Like that's a new thing. And so, we swung past the camera shop basically on the way to the airport and bought a 5D Mark III, I think it was, with like all the prime, or not the primes, the 2.8 lenses, and I bought a couple of flashes with triggers. I didn't know how to use those at all. That was tragic. And I flew out to China and basically sort of tried to fuddle my way through it on the plane on the way out there. And that was kind of the start. And I botched it totally, but it sparked off some enthusiasm.
You may have very, very well bought it off me at Camera House in Elizabeth Street.
To be honest, I probably would have actually. It probably would have been that exactly. It would be like, where are we going? Up Elizabeth Street. We're going to hunt the shit out of it for 3 hours. And we're going to eventually sell on the lowest price, not the service.
It wasn't called Blood Alley for nothing, was it? So there's an interesting foray into photography for you. So it was almost like you were looking for something new and something came along. So it was a matter of timing for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like I get a lot of people on workshops and things, or even in private classes where, they've got a trajectory and then all of a sudden they realize they don't want to do that trajectory. And I think that, it's, I was lucky I got introduced to it really early on, but it was only in 2016 that I actually went out full-time on my own. Right. So I've been working for people in various different roles that had photography as an ingredient. For a long time. And it was only in 2016 that I kind of went out and said, hey, I'm doing this full time. I'm going to drop everything. Ironically, it was 3 o'clock in the morning at the Christmas party of my workplace. But it's a very, very long road to get there. So
now I would imagine that workplace that you mentioned was how you and I crossed paths. Would have the company that starts with O.
We've been contractually obliged to not mention it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Not while I'm anyway. Otherwise, I have to fill those shoes. And
starts with O and rhymes with Olympus. That company. So the way Matt and I crossed paths was originally when I was working at Camera House in Geelong, Royd House Camera House, which is no longer known as. Back in the day, back in the early 10s, I guess.
I even forgot about that. I'm thinking because I used to see you down at your current,
that's right,
first iteration of your current shop.
Yes, that's right. But we go back a little further than that. I was managing Camera House in Geelong at the time when you and I first met. I think you came in with Mr. Cook, and he introduced me to you, and then we've sort of had vested interest, and we got along quite well. So when I went out on my own at Ocean Grove Camera and Photo, which just turned 11 years old, mind you, Matt. you came down and ran a couple of little demo days for me in the shop and all that sort of stuff. So when you were repping for this company, did you enjoy doing that?
Yeah, it was awesome. I really did. Yeah. But speaking of repping, you may have heard the news. Cook has very recently resigned. Last week, in fact.
Wow, you heard it here first. The breaking news on the Down South Photo Show.
Maybe that could be the title of our podcast. But I love that. I mean, it was a heyday for photography as well. So like, let's not kid ourselves.
Totally was
very different today to what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was when new technologies are coming out. Everyone's excited. There was, I don't want to say there was plenty of cash going around because that doesn't sound like a very tasteful thing to say. But no. At the same time, like cameras were selling well. So we got to do some really, really cool things. One of my favorite memories from those days actually was to do with Cookie when I think it was with Camera House, but we went down to what's that pub that's on the pier in Geelong?
The one Cunningham Pier, and you've got the pub at the end of it. Yeah,
that's right. So it kind of looks like a really like the what is it? That American like Luna Park on the pier thing.
It kind of does. Yeah.
Anyway, we went there and I remember taking out a bunch of the Camera House people. And I remember Brett Cook getting up on the bar in the pub and lighting a whisk full of steel wool on fire and swinging it around the inside of a pub. We were all photographing it and everyone's like, what the fuck is happening? Those were the days, they were. You got away with different things. It was great fun. I spent most of my time traveling to cool things. My job was to basically teach retail staff or educate them, not teach them, educate them as to why Olympus at the time was such a good option, which it really was. And just meant showing them cool things. We went go-karting, we went hot air ballooning.
The thing that came across with yourself and Cookie was you definitely believed in the brand. There was no question about that. I mean, as I do to this day, like I still am an Olympus shooter. Amongst other things, because being in the business, you become a camera whore and you get different toys given to you at times.
There's at least 2 celebrations a year. You got Christmas and birthdays, and at some point you're going to run out of lenses and cameras. Well,
that's right. Yeah, exactly right. he who dies with the most gear wins. We all know this. But as I say, it definitely came across your enthusiasm, not just for the brand, but also for photography in general. Fast forward to every now and then you'll share some of your work on Facebook and stuff like that, and I'll get a look at it. And quite recently, you shared one of the greatest underwater photos I've ever seen. And I'm not pissing in your pocket in any way, shape, or form, Matthew.
Do it.
The photos that you got with the humpback whales.
In Tonga.
In Tonga, which was earlier this year or last year.
I've done the whales twice, but I was there last year in August, so it probably would have been one of my last year's shots. Yeah. It was a much more successful journey than the first year.
With your permission, I might even throw one up on the screen if that's okay, which will happen with the magic of editing.
I'm also not precious about my photo. You can put whatever you'd like up. Even just selfies of me.
Even that one I found on the dark web. Is that okay?
Hey, look, I'm in for anything. If you can AI generate body on me, I'll be all up for it.
So we're jumping over the timeline a bit here, but just explain to me the Tonga adventure. How did that come about?
Actually, through pure disappointment, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that, would you?
No.
So Tonga is, for the context, for those who haven't sort of heard of, well, you probably heard of Tonga, but you might not have heard of it in this context. Humpback whales migrate from either from Antarctica or the Arctic, and they kind of basically go towards the equator and then have their babies, and then they go back, right? So depending on which side of the equator you're on, there are kind of mega spots to go for these whales. And the thing with Tonga is, unlike Australia, where they send you off and they jump you onto a boat, you jump in the water, the whale swims past because it's migrating, and then you jump back on the boat, they drop you another 100 meters ahead, the whale swim past, you jump in, migrates, and you kind of not chase it, because that sounds unethical. And it's not, I don't think what they do in Australia is unethical at all. It's just, it's kind of rushed from the experience of the person in the water. It feels as though you're chasing this thing down. It doesn't really give a crap that you're there at all, but you feel like you're kind of jumping ahead of it, right? In Tonga, though, that's where they go to have their babies. And so they get up there and all they do is just kind of hang out. I will say, just to appease all those people who are more in that science area. Like there's also research being done as to whether we disturb them there. So full disclosure, I'm not sure that I now see it as ethically kosher as what it seems. I mean, it might well be, but they're looking into that at the moment, right? So before anyone jumps down my throat and says, oh, but what they do in Tonga is not that. But basically, they've had their babies and their babies just want to socialize. So you can basically jump in the water and these whales will be sitting at 5 or 10 meters most of the time, and they've got their babies, and their babies just come up and they'll come and hang out and splash around with you, play, go back down, sit under mum. Mum will come up, play. They'll go back down again, sit there, play. And then when they get sick of you, they just swim off, and that's when you just kind of go, cool, we call it quits. The moment they move off at all, you're just like, yeah, that's fine. We're just moving on to something else. Yeah, so it's a really cool experience. But the reason I said it was disappointment was that actually it was an amazing trip. But the disappointment was that I was actually going to an information night for an Antarctica trip that I'd been asked to be a photographer on.
Right.
And Scott Portelli, who is an incredibly good photographer, also actually, ironically, an OM shooter. But he was presenting that night, and I got chatting to him and said, look, yeah, they've asked me to come along to sort of see what the workshops or these trips are all about. And, you know, I love your work and I'm really jealous. I said to him, like, I'm really jealous because last time I was in Tonga, I didn't have a great experience capturing the images I wanted for various reasons. And he just turns around and goes, oh, well, I've got a trip like this year coming up. There's like 3 spots on this trip, and there's 1 spot on this trip and 1 spot on this. Why don't you just tell me which date suits and just email me and just come? And I was like, wow, that's incredible. Like I'd gone into this thing, and the reason the disappointment was that the Antarctica thing never came about. I don't know what actually happened. It kind of fizzled, but yeah, Scott was gracious enough just to offer me to come over and check it out. And I had an amazing guide over there, Grant Thompson, and it was super relaxed and casual. I had an amazing group of humans with us, and yeah, I just went along and just shot the hell out of it. And a really generous offer from someone that there was no reason to expect that, you know. And it was really nice.
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, the results are amazing. As particularly, you know, a landscape or wildlife photographer, it takes a bit these days to get my jaw to drop. And I reckon, quite honestly, I think in the last probably 12 months, that photo stands out. Well, you know, those few photos stand out in my memory for being some absolute bangers. So well done to you.
It's not this one, is it? Was it this one?
No, I think that's a great shot.
Rubbish. Yeah, I'd probably a better one than this.
It looks from memory, it's got a humpback basically coming out. It looks like it's coming out of the darkness right towards you.
Oh yeah, right, the baby one. Yeah,
actually,
yes, which it was. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
that is a stunning image.
Just clear as well. I wasn't prepared for this. I actually bought myself a printer this week, and I've been test printing left, right, and center. My entire desk.
Sure. You read the notes. That's good. Well done. Yep, you had stuff ready. Good.
We just try this one instead.
Nice. Yeah. That's the guy you host the podcast with.
Slightly more actual hair, not that stuff that you stick
Let's keep this podcast as cliched as we possibly can.
Oh, do it. Love it.
What's your favorite camera of all time? Like that you've used? What if you had to pick one camera from that you've been using all this time?
Can you give me context though? Because that's so different. Like I mean, context is everything when it comes to choosing a camera.
Well, you've been around the block. You've used a lot of different systems, I would imagine. A lot of different systems, yeah.
I've worked out that the only brand I've not shot so far is Ricoh.
Okay. Well, who has?
I've shot more than, I know, right? I've shot more than like, I'm not saying I've just picked it up and taken some photos. I've owned or extensively used every other brand except for Ricoh.
Yeah, right.
And Leica, sorry. I will say Leica. I haven't shot Leica.
Yeah. I mean, okay, context. I mean, for me, I always go back to the Pentax K1000 as being just my all-time favorite camera. You know, it's a classic. It's, you know, it's the camera I cut my teeth on, that sort of thing. So do you have one in particular that you just look back on and go, yeah, I really enjoyed shooting with that, or it's got a bit of an aura about it? Or do you just see them as tools of the trade to be discarded for the next pretty little thing, Matthew?
It sounds so heartless, but like, I mean, kinda, yeah. I mean, I give you some context. Like, some of the best photos I think I've ever taken were probably on my very first, or not very first, but I had a 5D Mark something. I can't remember what it was. It wouldn't have been more than a 3, I can't imagine, probably even a 2. Yeah. And I think at the time I look back and I go, it gave me a lot of satisfaction because I'd upgraded. I then shot for with Panasonic, the GH2 for quite a well, when I say quite a while, about 2 months before I got actually forced into shooting Olympus because I won a competition and they told me to get rid of it. But like I shot some of the best photos that underwater photos. I look back now and go, that camera, I only had it for like 3 or 4 months, but it was, shot some great photos, but that doesn't mean it was the camera. It was just, that was a period of time. I think that realistically, the most rewarding camera. So let's take out what's the best camera, but the most rewarding camera. Because if I said my corporate shoots, I'm not jumping away from Sony at all. Like I'm not leaving them for anything because the eye tracking, the animal track, every tracking part, it shoots 30 frames a second. It's perfect resolution. It's got everything I want and more. But it's really unsatisfying to shoot on. I find because it's almost like you can get away with the spray and pray model a little bit more. And so recently, and this is just for I don't think this was targeted at this topic, by the way. So I think if you're listening, you'll be like, oh, wow, they scripted this well.
But we don't do scripts.
Recently, I shot the one or contributed to the campaign for the GFX 100 S2 launch with the 500mm lens. And it is a really wild camera. It's medium format Fuji. It's 102 megapixels. And that's kind of in itself, when you're been shooting for a long time, that's something different enough that you go, oh, that's cool. That's different. It shows you more resolution. Does it substantially matter in your end result? Probably not. But it feels good. It looks good.
Now, this is a point I just wanted to quickly touch on. When you say it feels good, it looks good. I found personally, you said the Canon 5D Mark III. As far as digital cameras go, I find that is the last camera that I can remember getting my hands on that felt like it had a soul. Does it make any sense? I mean, it feels like it's got something about it. To a lesser degree, the earlier Micro Four Thirds Olympus as it came along, the
EM5 and stuff.
And the pen and those sort of cameras, they felt like they were more than just tools of the trade. They actually felt like really, nice objects to look at. They felt good in the hand. The build quality was all there. And I think the Canon 5D Mark III and probably the Mark IV, because the body was pretty much the same thing. And then I don't think there's a mirrorless camera out there yet that has that vibe about it. And I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it.
I know exactly what it is, and I can pinpoint it because it's happened. Well, at least I think I know what it is because it's happened to me, right? So, this is like, it's not controversial in the sense that it's not a bad thing, but it's controversial in the sense that we all have different preferences, and it's really important to recognize, I guess, that not everyone wants the same thing. So I know photographers who shoot at the highest frame rate all the time because they want to get everything all the time and they don't want to compromise or risk losing anything. And then I know photographers who only ever shoot on one single frame, even if it's a really, really high action situation, because they feel that the timing that they choose is the photo itself. And this is kind of like where tools like Pro Capture, and Nikon's got a new one I think is just coming out. It's
Sony are doing it now with the A9. They've got the
it's like this pre-shooting situation. And like, there's nothing wrong with that, because if you're a working photographer and you're shooting the Olympics, like hell, that's going to get you the shot, right? It's the perfect way to be a backup. But I think that you got to work out firstly what sort of stuff you shoot, because I know that for me, my actual photography that I do for work, when I say work, I mean not outside, not in workshops, but like my commercial stuff. And I say commercial, it sounds really fancy. It's not. It's like corporate stuff. But those photos, like what I need to do is deliver my client these pictures, and they need to be good, and I need to capture the moment and as right a moment as I can. It's not critical, but it's like, the better the better it is, the better. That is a documentation photo, and in documentary photography, getting the moment is really, really critical. I think though that where this GFX experience really was contrasting to me, and probably I think where maybe you're looking at the older OM cameras and the 5D3 and probably any other camera before that, to be honest, actually didn't have enough technology in them to be any good,
right?
Compared to these standards, right? So said to you, hey, what's the burst mode, like high speed shooting? It's probably like 5 frames a second. Which is not really like spray and pray. 5 frames a second isn't really that fast. And it means you've got to be really discerning about your timing. And so the satisfaction level as a photographer, when you get it, you're just like, hell yeah, that was me. Like I did that. I chose that moment. When you can shoot, you know, on my A1, it's 30 frames a second, which is still ridiculous. I think there's a new generation of camera, and it's not brand specific, so I'm not canning a brand, but it's like 100 and something frames a second, or even the A9, I think, shoots that.
Yeah, the A9 with the global shutter shoots 120 frames per second, full RAW.
The hell? Like if you're a working photographer, you don't have time to go through 120 frames a second. And if you're not a working photographer, you don't need it. So it's kind of like, I feel like at some point the technology has gotten so good that we've run out of things to improve.
Yeah.
And so it's making everything faster and better and more. And
to extend on that, do you also think that means now, well, we're getting philosophical, Matthew. Do you think that means now that anyone can be a photographer?
No, not at all. 100% not. I think it's the opposite. It's like now everyone's a crap photographer because all you do is just point and hope, and then you get sick of editing, so you just choose one. Yeah. And this kind of, just to round out what I was saying, like, because it's not a long story, but I got given this GFX 100S2 500mm lens. I got it 12 hours before I was flying out to the Northern Territory to shoot a campaign. I got told you're not allowed to use the RAWs because you can shoot RAW, but you can't open them anywhere, right?
Right.
So you can only shoot JPEG technically, as far as the delivery is concerned. And they said, it's really amazing. It's a sports and wildlife camera. It shoots 7 frames a second. What the hell are you talking about? Like 7 frames a second. That is, the same performance I was getting from my D850, And then it kind of struck me that it's not the camera to go and shoot whatever you feel. And it's not a spray and pray. Because even if you could shoot 100 frames a second, the files are 250 meg each. So that's so unfeasible to shoot that this is now a camera that makes you stop and think again, because you have to capture the timing. You can't just shoot as much as you want. The depth of field in medium format is shallower. Like there's so many technical parts where it's actually a trickier camera to shoot. And I think that to me, I actually kind of gravitate towards it. Like it doesn't fit all my needs, that's for sure. Like it wouldn't fit my day-to-day like corporate needs, but there's something that's really sexy in the corner of my eye, like going, that camera made you stop a little. And it's what we don't do enough of, I think. So maybe that's where your analogy, or your experience of saying that the 5D Mark III or those old pen cameras were better because they weren't so tech heavy. It made you have more input and maybe felt better. Like,
definitely. And we've spoken on the show before about the beauty of shooting film and getting out one of my now 7 Pentax K1000s that people just keep sending me. Thank you very much.
Keep doing it. You're gonna have an eBay store shortly. Don't worry.
But I mean, I took my K1000 down to Port Fairy on a family holiday 18 months ago, and I chucked a roll of film. I took one roll of film, 24 shots. That's all I had, and man, how can I put this without sounding like a wanker? Every frame mattered. Yeah. And I've got to be honest, the strike rate, like I would say 18 out of 24, I'm stoked with because every single time I stopped.
Yeah.
Do I push the button now? No, that's going to happen. No, this composition's better, and that sort of stuff I love. And you're exactly right. It's almost, the technology almost is counterintuitive to a better photo, to experienced photographers. And I think the other way to look at it is, well, will this technology, help photographers, help people become photographers? And it probably will, to a certain extent, because if I've got a kid that's coming up that, a 16, 17-year-old kid at high school, well, I'm not going to give them my K1000, am I? I'm not going to give them an Olympus pen, from EPL1, they're not getting that. So, because I think that would discourage.
Do you think there's a hump though, right? Do you think that there's like a bell curve in this? Because I think this is what I'm experiencing lately. And this is like really comes down to that, again, the philosophical part of it, I guess, which I don't like the idea of that, because I've never considered myself to be like the art wank version of photography, but I did just buy a printer last week to print photos that are going to go nowhere except for my own wall.
You did buy an Epson though, so well done.
Yeah, well, it's a nice printer. That's kind of the joke. But I do sort of feel as though when you start out in photography, what you really need, like anything that you're learning, you need quick wins. If you're learning to read, you don't give someone a Shakespeare novel or a Shakespeare play. You give them, a phonetic, a phonetics book that they can kind of spell out and sound out. And then at some point you get good enough at reading that things are pretty easy to do. Or when you're taking photos, you kind of get it enough that, yep, all right, like I can comfortably capture the subject. And I talk about this in wildlife photography. I always say there's 2 levels. One level is just the technical. Is it sharp? Like there's no point in submitting a photo to somewhere where if it's not sharp, if it's meant to be sharp, that is. And then it's like, that's one thing, but that's only saying technical's right. And then there's the story part. And the story part is genuinely the more difficult section of photography because it takes a lot more thought, and to be unique, it's harder. And I think that's where we almost get to that top of that curve where we're like, cool, I can very easily shoot a photo. I can shoot whatever I want. I'm proud to say that I think I could be in almost any situation and get a reasonable shot. It might not be the best version of it, but I'm pretty diverse. I know I know lighting, I know flash, I know constant lights, I know, but that actually doesn't really equate to anything. It's like, that means you can light it. That doesn't mean it's going to be a good photo.
Yeah.
The next part that's really hard is if you're photographing a person, as an example, is getting the right expression and moment and the right angle and getting them posed in a way that's compelling. That is not photography. That's posing. That's really bloody difficult.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah. So with our photography learning curve, I think that, at the beginning, as you say, you just need a quick win. If I can get 120 frames a second, sure, it might take more time, but I will find photos that will encourage me. I'll get to the next level.
Yeah.
As you get better and better, I think you realize it's sort of shooting fish in a barrel, and that maybe there's not as much satisfaction coming out of that individual shot. So we start to challenge ourselves by saying, look, if I didn't have infinite choice, what do I choose? And to be honest, I use a really crass analogy for this in my workshops. Don't know what rating your podcast has, but we'll put it in there anyway. So I always ask people the difference between an artistic nude and porn.
Yeah.
And I go like, an artistic nude shot has got strategic shadows, so it leaves a lot to the imagination, and it makes you focus on things you may not have focused on otherwise, like, shape and light and stuff. And then you've got porn, which is kind of like, hey, if we light everything, we'll just show you what it is and you just choose the parts you like.
Yes.
And I feel as though that, you look at better cameras and yes, you've got more frames per second. Sure, that's one aspect. You might have better dynamic range. So you go, I can pull the shadows up and the highlights down, and now I can see everything.
Yeah.
Kind of go like, you've just turned your landscape into a porn piece, because you're not telling people what you liked. You're just saying, hey, I'm not sure. I'm not confident in making this decision. So here's everything. You just choose what you think is good. And that's not the sign of a good photographer. And so I don't know that the technology at this point, we kind of got to a point, I just don't think it's helping us anymore. It's like, cameras are getting better, great. They're getting faster, great. There are some situations in documentation stuff, sports, wildlife, news, absolutely, that's super useful. But from an artistic perspective, I'm kind of feeling as though I'm not sure that we are focusing on the right thing anymore. I think we're focusing more on the tech, and we're not focusing on what you do with that tech.
Yeah. And I think, expanding a bit on dynamic range, that's one area that, particularly in the last decade has exploded. Like, how many stops of dynamic range do you need? I mean, and you're exactly right. I mean, playing with the shadows slider, it's a lot of fun. And, knowing when to stop is hard. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's a very good analogy.
You're welcome to take it. Anyone, you're welcome to take it.
I won't be ripping that off at all.
That's as long as you don't start doing too much research on artistic nudes and porn, and you end up with a bunch of material that might get you into trouble. That's
well, lots of red flags on Google. I think I listened, and you said that your current system is Sony that you shoot with now.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. So,
right.
That answers that question. Done.
Well, interestingly though, I will clarify that, because a lot of people say like, oh, so should I get a Sony? As though like, that would make a difference. I do think it's a good system. I won't talk about the merits of the system, but I will explain where it came from.
Yep.
And give you an idea. I had a DSLR system. I was on a Nikon D850. I just bought the 400mm 2.8 lens for a squillion dollars, and went to Africa. COVID hit, and as soon as COVID hit, Sony announced the A1, and I was like, oh crap. brands are taking full frame mirrorless seriously now. Like this is the first really serious full frame mirrorless camera. And I thought, great, Nikon will do something soon. And then they sort of said they were going to do it, and then they didn't. And I realized that if I waited too long, all my DSLR gear would be worth nothing. And it was basically a brand new lens. And so I thought the only time to sell it is now before everyone else converts, because then DSLR is going to get trashed in price. And so I just shifted straight away. But these days, if I hadn't made that switch back then, I would probably still be shooting on a Z8 and Z9 and all those. It's not because I love Nikon more or anything, but just I'm not at Sony because they're the best. I'm on Sony because at the time it just happened to fit the exact situation that I was in and needing that gear for. Yeah.
Shrewd offloading your mirrored gear.
Oh, it was just like it made
in 2020.
Yeah, I just it was perfect, and I got most of my money back for it and stuff. And then, of course, I just wasted heaps more money on like Sony gear. So
yeah, I mean, I literally had a customer come in a couple of weeks ago who bought me a Nikon D750. Great little camera, nice camera. Had a Tamron 24-70 2.8, the Art series, beautiful, like all really nice glass, a few other telephotos and stuff. Plonked it in front of me and said,
they expect it to be worth something, hey?
Do you reckon I can get $3,500 for this? And I nearly choked on my cappuccino. And
what currency they were after?
Exactly. And I literally just said, to be perfectly honest, you'd be lucky if you got $1,000 for it. Lenses, everything, the whole bit. Which he then proceeded to sell for $1,000. So
to you. And now it's line for 3,000 if anyone wants to buy it.
That's right. Yeah, pesos. Okay, so let's go. What the hell is a BFOP?
It's a really good question. BFOP is probably the best photography festival on the planet.
Probably. I tend to agree. It probably is.
We have no evidence. So probably is very important. So as anyone's listening there with their lawyer ears. Yeah.
For those of you playing along at home, BFOP stands for the Bright Festival of Photography, which my learned friend on the other screen here is a co-founder of. How long been running for now?
That's a good question. I think we're up to year 7 or 8. No, this will be year 8, I think.
Wow.
It's really hard. So co-founder is an interesting term. I was involved in the first festival as an instructor.
Right.
It was a very, very interesting experimental festival. and then I got involved in year 2, like properly involved in year 2. So
apologies.
It's more credit where credit's due. Nick is Mother BFOP. He this disaster, and now I just babysit it most of the time. So yeah.
So what's BFOP all about?
BFOP is designed, I think, to be a festival that is not about the wankiness of photography. Right. So I think that where it originally came from, just some real context, is it was not a lost bet, but it was more like a deal with the brewery. So that's right. Nick needed a sponsor for beers for an event at the MGA. Rupert, who worked at the Bright Brewery or who managed the Bright Brewery, happened to be a friend of Nick's, and they come up with a deal that if Nick delivered a festival to bring people to Bright in October, didn't matter what the festival was, then Rupert would provide beer for the MGA's event. And it was kind of born from there because Rupert was a real big, he was very interested in video and like adventure video stuff. And Nick is very interested in photography. So it was a perfect match. But the festival itself is it genuinely is. When I say it's probably the best photography festival in the world, I don't just say that because it's our tagline, but it really kind of is in a way, because it's not about going in and hearing all the, I'll say, inaccessible or inaccessible parts of photography and then feeling a bit stupid and maybe next year you'll be smarter. It's really about going in and having a community first, because it's such an isolating hobby in a lot of ways. And even if you're in a camera club, a lot of camera clubs aren't, they're very supportive. There's lots of good people in them, but they have limitations as to how many experiences they can give you. And so this festival brings together sort of 30 to 35 of some of the best instructors in Australia, and some others as well.
Yes,
but we bring together a huge amount of like really educated people in their space, professionals in their space, people who really know their area and field. And we run these kind of taste tester workshops. We've got 500 people. It's 120 workshops last year. I think this year we're pitching for 130 or 140 or something like that. And yeah, they're big. You know, you've got 20 people in a workshop. It's not designed to be like an intimate, you know everything, learn everything workshop. It's designed to kind of go, hey, have you ever tried this before? Here's 3 things you're going to learn. And here's this really weird genre that you've never tried, or maybe you've not tried it in this space, or you just want to get a little bit better. Yeah. So it's more of a social event revolving around photography, where we happen to have tons and tons of educational elements that get blended into, the bar and, a bit of fun, to be honest.
So it's a 3-day festival that happens in Bright in country Victoria, in northeastern Victoria, in the high country, as we like to call it here.
With the details I was going to say, but like,
yeah, it's a fantastic festival. I did sign up for the 2020 festival when it was all online. Then I actually went to my first festival last year in person. Had a ball, had an absolute ball. And I'm not saying that just because you're on it.
So what was your favorite part then? Like, tell everyone, what was your favorite? Because you experienced it as a punter last year.
I did. Yeah, totally.
So why are you coming back this year? I mean, I asked you to come back, but like, even you as a punter again, what was it why was it good?
I think, like you touched on, like-minded people, first and foremost, all coming together in one place. Everywhere I looked, I knew someone for a start. I mean, being in the industry for as long as I have, that's, and there was a lot of industry folk there. So there was that. But I actually signed myself up to a couple of the workshops. And I went out with, I think, was it Mark Watson?
Oh yeah,
bikes. Did the mountain bike. And now I ride mountain bikes. I enjoy biking. I'm a photographer. I thought this might bring 2 genres together, and I had an absolute ball. They basically put a mountain biker in front of me in stunning light, doing jumps and backflips, for Christ's sake. I mean, it doesn't get, like, I can't just go and make that happen, So that's what I really enjoyed about that aspect of the whole BFOP thing, was that you don't just go there and you're in a lecture. You go there and you're doing it. You've got your camera, you're pointing it at a model under, I did Glyn Lavender's awesome portraits in shit light, or whatever he called it.
Yep.
Which I thoroughly enjoyed and highly recommend if anyone's going to BFOP to try and get your name down for one of those. And I also went up Mount Buffalo for a sunrise. Now, and it wasn't just, let's go up Mount Buffalo for a pretty sunrise. Let's go up Mount Buffalo and let's learn how to shoot this thing. And let's go to a place that I've probably been once before in my life. Again, with like-minded people, and the vibe was so good. Like, the energy at BFOP is so up. It's all like, if you're not going to, if you can't have fun at BFOP, there's something wrong with you. It's a very friendly, welcoming, fun place to be. And there's beer. And there is beer. Like, that's the whole point of it. It's meant to be like the most open arms, and what's probably the most interesting thing, and like what I love hearing about your opinion on it, is that I think that there's a lot of photography workshops and things designed for average, when I say average photographers, like average punters, like, people who do this for a hobby on the side. They've got no professional affiliation. They might not even be that good, to be honest. But there's a lot of things that you can market to those people, right? And you can almost say like, hey, I'll get a model, and people will just be gagging about that. They'll be like, oh my God, a model. Like, I never get to shoot models. Yeah. Like, that's kind of happens all over the place. But as you say, what we try and do is provide experiences and workshops that give you something you don't experience every day. And more importantly, we really heavily vet our photographers, like our instructors. Yeah. So we get a lot of applications every year of people going, hey, I want to run a workshop. And we're like, that's great. Cool. We all do. Tell me, like, we'd sit down on Zoom and actually sit there with Nick and I, usually over a few drinks, and go, all right, talk to us about what you do and why you want to do this. And you can really quickly see that the cohort of instructors that we've got at the festival, they're not there because they want to show off. They're not there because they want to market something. Although, let's not piss around it. Like, they're there to show off what they do. But they're there because they love being around people and they love showing people things. And I think that even when I've been to workshops, I try and get around as much as I can to like visit all these, we have some really weird workshops. Like, we had a Japanese rope bondage workshop the last couple of years. And how strange. I'm never going to see that in my life, except for like Friday nights and at BFOP. And so. And in your browse history. Yeah, that's it. But like, if you can learn something as a professional, if as a professional, you can turn up to a workshop and actually learn something still, that tells you there's a lot of value there. Yeah.
And that's what we love, is that even if you hear the same thing that you already know, but said through someone else's eyes or said through their own words and describing it through their eyes, I think that there is a lot to learn. So we get a lot of professional photographers even coming up who just want to go like, hey, I do product photography, but I wonder what this person does differently because I love their style, or I wonder how they use their lights, or whatever. So you don't have to be we have beginners, like people who are unboxing their camera at the event. We have people who have been in the industry for years and years and years and years and years. And it's just meant to be about joy. It's meant to just be about having fun.
Yeah, well, I think one thing as well, when I went up for the sunrise shoot with Cam and Tom up at Buffalo, so Cam said that I was there. A lot of people know from the Down South Photo Show, you know, our partnership, you know, what I do and what we do. And while we were doing the shooting the sunrise and there's people all lined up, I had people coming back and just very quietly whispering, how do I change my ISO? How do I, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, I loved that. I loved being, I mean, I wasn't there in any capacity other than a punter last year. I really liked that that people were able to come to me, you know, quietly, and not because people don't want to feel foolish, particularly in front of 20 other photographers.
Yeah.
And I think where BFOP is great is you leave your ego at the door, and like if you're asking the question, chances are Joe Blow next year probably doesn't know it either. So that's where I found, and BFOP felt really accessible. It was, you know, I think that's what, and like you said, open arms, you know, that was, yeah, I definitely felt that at BFOP last year. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to rolling back in 2024. The dates for this year's festival off the top of your head, Matt?
Or second weekend of October.
Well done.
I should know this. I was working on it all day.
Look, it's fine.
I was doing all day. No, here it is. It is the 11th to the 13th. I should know that.
It is the second weekend of October. Well done.
It's seeing pretty good with this stuff.
Yeah, you are. You're all over it.
But
and how do people get involved? How do I do a BFOP?
How do you do a BFOP? Well, firstly, you leave your ego at the door. If you have one. If you don't have one, actually make one up. It's kind of fun. But if you jump onto the website, bfopaustralia.com. I always sort of have to think about that because I didn't set the website up initially, but
it will be linked into the description, by the way, of this video.
But basically, like it feels chaotic when you first come into it. We will have a lot of communication around how things work, but basically you buy a ticket. The ticket's going to give you a certain amount of credit. I think this year it's $350 credit. We call them BFOP dollars. And then that allows you at one point to go on, when we announce them, we have like a bookings alive, and it's kind of like Black Friday sales where everyone's like killing each other and elbowing them in the face online to get in there. You book your workshops, you can use your credit. And then once you've used all your credit or whatever portion you want, we do then open up to additional bookings as well. So most people get anywhere between like 3 and 5 workshops into their weekend with the credit, depending on how you use it. And then, of course, there's opportunities to book more. We actually have some really cool things this year. We're also looking to toy with that. If you've been to BFOP before, these are really going to excite you. We've had a lot of very deep, long discussions around how we can introduce new, not genres, but new formats of workshops that sort of suit your more seasoned BFOPper. And there's some really cool stuff coming out, and we'll hopefully start announcing that at the end of the month.
Fantastic. So we touched on, you know, we're talking things like, you know, portrait workshops, there was sports workshop, that sort of stuff. What other kinds of workshops can people sign up for at BFOP, Matt?
Yeah, so we're still working through all of them for this year, but like as an example, we've got food workshops, but they're not just food workshop, like food photography. It's like Carl's running like a food in motion workshop. So it's like food photography, but involving an element of motion. That's like, could be pouring sauces and watching the drip down the side, or like sprinkling something on. So it's kind of a subsector of that genre. We have a lot of different portraiture workshops. In fact, you know, as broad as to say, some of them revolve around like mindfulness rather than actual photography. Some of you might find that to be strange, but others will just kind of get where I'm coming from on this. You know, like photography is one of the most mindful things you can do.
100%.
So actually connecting those two topics together is really, really important. We have this year intimate landscapes. We've got landscapes of like small subjects, big landscapes. We have got We are working on a drone workshop. I don't want to promise anything. In fact, I'm like a 30% there with it, to be honest.
I'll cut that bit out then. You didn't say that.
We can say that it exists potentially. Look, that's what Beefop's about, though. We'll be changing workshops up until the moment it launches. Things change. It's that kind of festival. It's there for the people. It's not there for, we don't try and market it as something that's a set and forget. We've got dark and moody food. We've got, I think our shibari workshops are back. So our Japanese rope bondage workshops, acrobats. We've got light painting. We've got someone working on an astro workshop this year, which again, it's very weather dependent. So of
course,
touchy about that, but that's potentially there. We've got our mountain bikes. We've got even things like photojournalism. So actually understanding how to tell a story with photos, like a real story, not just like, the story of what you just did, but like an actual human story. We've also got really fun things like photography, Rogaine and stuff. So like last year, as an example, we had 2,600 seats on workshops.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's not like you're going to turn up and go, oh, like there's 4 things to choose from. Like we had 120 workshops, 20 people in each workshop. Like it's nuts. Absolutely.
Now, central to BFOP is the town hall in Bright.
Yeah, we use the community centre there.
The community centre, and that's a hive of activity for 3 days. It's a hub. It's a central point that you pass through as you're going off to another workshop. There is a lovely little trade show that goes on there as well.
But you're going to mention the bar first. The bar is probably the more important part.
That goes without saying on the Down South Photo Show. But yeah, so I know last year there was representatives from different camera manufacturers were there. A few camera retailers were there as well. So I'm assuming that's happening again this year.
Yeah, we've got great, there's always our retail partners. So we partner with Croydon Camera House and Camera House more broadly as well. So they have a retail stand there with some ridiculous deals because they really tighten the screws on the suppliers. We've got all the camera brands there this year. We believe at this stage that we've got Canon and Sony are joining us for the first time. So that would mean that only Lumix and Ricoh are the 2 brands that are not present, which is pretty exciting.
They will be conspicuous in their absence, Matt.
Yeah, well, that's just it. We've got a whole bunch of gadgets and gear and stuff, like, the fun bits. We also have the bar there, and there's also presentations that happen on the main stage. So if you're not involved in a workshop, you can sit down and hear from one of our professional photographers about their crazy stories of the stuff they've done, or tips and tricks and things like that. So there's always stuff going on, and even I speak to a lot of beefhoppers now, and they're like, "Yeah, cool. In that bit of downtime, we've actually organised. We're going to jump in a car with a group of friends and jump up the mountain and do something."
Yeah,
and that's kind of the community we want. Like these just subsects. It brings people together. That's ultimately all it's about, is bringing people together under an umbrella that we all kind of love.
Yeah, for sure. And not to mention the awesome food trucks out in the car park. Great coffee. Look, it really is a proper festival in the true sense of the word. So beefopaustralia.com.au is where you can log into.
I think it might just be .com. It's beefopaustralia.
Okay. Well, no, it'll be on the screen and it'll be linked below.
It's weird, yeah.
You sure this is the guy that organized it? I'm not sure.
You know what? Like, this is the website URL is the least of my concerns.
It's a massive undertaking by yourself and Nick. I know last year I saw you for all of 5 minutes collectively as you zipped here and zipped there, and I know you. It's a very full-on weekend for yourself. But as I say, the feedback that I've received about BFOP has been fantastic. Like nothing short of awesome.
Is it probably a good time to mention that you're coming this year as an instructor?
Yes. Well, you can mention that if you like.
I'll mention it. There we go.
Okay.
So we are always on the lookout for different instructors, to people who can fill different spots and not voids in the festival. But we're pretty conscious about how we choose people, because we don't want lots double up. Yeah. And I think that last year you tagged along with Cam and Tom in a punter role, although I know that you still really helped out. But this year we've got you joining us. We haven't really nailed down exactly what the idea is, but I can kind of half announce the idea, because
we can tease it.
That's it, exactly,
because that's what we do.
So we have got a lot of people who have been for multiple years. They've done lots of the workshops, and we do change them up. But there's only so much you can change every year without completely flipping the thing on its head. So we're actually talking about this year running like a almost full day alpine hut tour. where you go around and shoot landscapes and intimate landscapes around the Alpine region. And so we've actually got Charlie Brown, who is a local up in Mount Beauty. And we've asked Brendan if he will join Charlie Brown in running a workshop. So we have sort of 2 instructors with 2 groups, but you'll switch instructors throughout the day. So you kind of get different knowledge bases from everyone. And yeah, it'll be a longer workshop. Obviously, you know, probably we'll chew up a bit more of your credit because it takes up a bit more of your time and things, but it'll be a really unique opportunity to get around those areas that you may not even discover on your own, or of course you won't ever discover those places with a guide unless you're on, you know, what is relatively a high cost workshop. So yeah, so we're really excited to have you along, Brendan, to join that. You know, as you say, we've known each other, you know, in a way, one way, shape or form for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think what I really admire about your style of, you know, when you're talking about it and when you sort of, I imagine the way you teach it, because I've not been on a workshop, but I can get it from the way you talk about it, is again, it's that humbleness of realizing that you know, like everyone at BFOP, we're all there to help you get your photos. It's not like some workshops where you go on them and people just want to show you what they got, you know?
Yeah.
Instructor just wants to show you how good it could be. And you're just like, oh my God, I'm inspired, but I still can't do it. You know,
yeah.
Actually helping people to achieve their goals is the key. And you've got that in your book, you know?
Well, I'm thinking back, I ran my first photography workshop in 1998. At the Hyatt in Coolum on the Sunshine Coast.
Was that with Box Brownie back then?
Pretty much, yeah. It probably was actually 120 film, Box Brownie. And yeah, it was all film back then. But from the very first moment I ran my first workshop, I feel like I really enjoy teaching, and I love the penny drop moment when that comes to the client and you can see their eyes light up and they go, I just learned something then that I'm going to carry on with forever and keep improving on. I love that kind of stuff. So hopefully, folks, if you're watching, if you want to, you know, if you're coming to BFOP, it'd be awesome if you jump on and join me, join one of the other 30 odd instructors up at BFOP. You'll get a hell of a lot out of it. It's a brilliant weekend. So clear your diaries, jump on BFOP Australia and check it all out.
Best couple of bucks you'll ever spend, I promise.
100%, Matt. This has gone way longer than the half an hour we allocated.
Sorry.
So no, that's perfectly fine. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Down South Photo Show. You're very, very well spoken, and you know your craft, and you know the industry really well. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me along.
No worries at all. And all of Matt's socials and all of Matt's websites and all of Matt's bloody workshops and the lot will be all linked below here and on the Down South Photo Show website, which is dsps.com.au. Do we mention the podcast that you run with?
Nah, don't. It's not worth it. But the one question for you though.
Yes.
You said this month's challenge or competition is winter.
Yeah, I know. How original.
Not very, but
no.
Tell me, right? So if you could describe what you would envisage as like the perfect winner of the winter competition, like what sort of elements are you looking for that would be like, that is the winter competition?
I'm looking for a shot that when I look at it, I feel cold.
Well, I can tell you now, Mount Borbor currently had snow. None of the others do, but Mount Borbor has snow. So yeah, looking for a location this weekend.
Yes, and I would imagine a fair amount of Tasmania and New Zealand would be covered in the stuff at the moment. So,
but you know, like, no,
yeah, more because it's just there, like, literally. All right, Matt, thank you very much for joining us on the Down South Photo Show. This has been episode 124 of the Down South Photo Show. The other fella might be back next week. Who knows? Maybe Matt might be that popular. He just comes back.
Where is he this week? What happened?
People probably do want to know that. Matt, probably forgot to mention that off the top. He's not Cam. Cam is on Flinders Island running a workshop at the moment, and Flinders Island internet can be a wee bit sketchy. So we decided that we either didn't do a show this week or we got a special guest on, and I said, you know what?
Who's more
Give the fans what they want.
Yeah, and well, when you get enough fan mail, you just got to do it. Hey, like
they want guests, the feedback.
Well, and next week then in that case, I'll see you next week.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Matt. We'll see you next time. Bye.